All right, today we are going to question something so fundamental we almost never even think about it. It rules our lives, our schedules, our entire existence. We're talking about time. But what if our deepest feeling about it, our intuition, is just plain wrong? What if time isn't even real? Okay, so let's really dive into this. We all feel time passing, right? Sometimes a minute feels like an eternity, and then an hour can just fly by. But that clock on the wall, it just keeps ticking along, relentless. It feels so solid, so real, so unavoidable. But what if that feeling, that deep sense of reality, is actually misleading us? So let's start with a question. It sounds super simple, but trust me, it kind of unravels everything. Ready? How long is now? What's the duration of this exact present moment? Is it a second? A millisecond? Is it the absolute shortest instant you can possibly imagine? No, really, try to pin it down. You'll see it's way, way trickier than it sounds. And see, to even try and figure out the length of now, we first have to ask an even bigger question. What is time actually made of? And this leads us to a fundamental dilemma, a fork in the road, really. We're forced to choose between two and only two possible ways that time could. Now, this whole argument hinges on one really powerful idea. Think about it. The past, it's gone. It only exists in our memories. The future? Well, that hasn't happened yet. It's just a bunch of possibilities. So if you really get down to it, the only thing that's actually real is right now, the present moment. But if all of reality is crammed into this tiny, tiny sliver of now, then how in the world does anything move forward? Well, logically, there are really only two ways this could happen. Option one is that time is continuous. Picture a smooth, unbroken river just flowing along. Option two is that time is discrete, that it jumps from one distinct moment to the next, kind of like the individual frames of a movie. It's got to be one or the other, right? So let's put both of these ideas to the test. All right, let's start with the one that probably feels most natural to all of us. The idea that time is a continuous, seamless flow. That river just carrying us from the past into the future. It just feels right, doesn't it? But this is where things start to get really, really weird. Okay, here's the paradox. If time is truly continuous, then between any two moments, I don't care how close they are, there's an infinite number of other moments tucked in between. So to get from, say, 1 second to the very next second, time would have to pass through an infinite number of points. It would have to complete an infinite number of steps. How can anything cross a gap that is literally endless? Let's make this super concrete. To get from second 1 to second 2, time has to pass through the halfway point, right? 1.5 seconds. Simple enough. But what's the very next instant after 1.5 seconds? Your brain might jump to, 1.51? But wait a second, what about 1.501? That comes first. And we can just keep playing this game forever. No matter what next moment you can possibly name, I can always find one that's even closer. 1.5001, 1.50001, and on and on and on forever. So here's the mind-bending takeaway. If time is a smooth, continuous flow, it gets trapped. It can't ever advance from one moment to the next, because there literally is no next moment. The whole idea of moving forward just breaks down. So it looks like continuous time is a total dead end. Okay, so the whole smooth river idea doesn't work. But remember, we had another option on the table. What if time isn't a flow at all? What if it moves in tiny, distinct, separate steps? Like a digital clock that just ticks from one moment to the next. So this theory says time is made up of these tiny individual units. Let's call them quanta of time. They're the smallest possible bits. But here's the catch. If a unit is truly the smallest possible piece of time, then it can't have any duration inside of it, right? Because if it did, you could just divide it again. So the duration of each individual moment has to be 0. And this is the killer blow. What happens when you add up a billion moments that each last for 0 seconds? Or an infinite number of them? You still get 0. The whole timeline would last for no time at all. So, we've hit another brick wall. Continuous time doesn't work because of that infinity problem. And discrete time doesn't work because of this 0 problem. And if those were the only two ways time could possibly exist, and neither one of them works, what are we supposed to believe? We've just followed the logic step by step, and it's completely taken apart both options. we're left with this one stark conclusion. Time, as we think of it, can't be continuous and it can't be discrete. And since those were the only two ways time could possibly exist, we're forced into one single, inescapable conclusion. Time does not exist.
So if that's true, then what is this thing we've been experiencing our entire lives? Well, the answer this argument gives is actually pretty simple but profound. It's change. The universe is just constantly changing. What we call time is nothing more than our perception of that change. One state of the universe simply becomes the next state. If there were no change, there would be no time.
And this really reframes everything. It means there's no river of the past flowing behind us and no ocean of the future we're heading into. There is only a single, universal now that is constantly reconfiguring itself. We aren't moving through time at all. We are just here, in the present, witnessing it change. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is a cool philosophical puzzle, but that's all it is. But what's absolutely wild is that this ancient paradox, it lines up perfectly with some of the biggest questions at the cutting edge of modern physics. Believe it or not, physicists today are struggling with this exact same dilemma. They have a theory for something called Planck time, which would be like the smallest possible pixel of time. That points towards a discrete, chunky universe. But the honest truth, we just don't know. Whether reality is fundamentally smooth or chunky is still one of the biggest unanswered questions in all of science. And so we kind of end up right back where we started with a question. We just walked through a simple, logical argument that completely dismantles our most basic experience of reality. And it leaves us with a really provocative, maybe even unsettling final thought. If our perception of something as fundamental as the flow of time could be an illusion, what else could be?